Hello and welcome to a new episode of That Fertile Feeling, the podcast. My name is Françoise and this is the last episode of 2024. So I thought it would be great to do an episode that really gives you the highlights of last year, of all the episodes I did. And what I love about creating this podcast is that I learned so many new things myself. I get to talk to all of these amazing people. I have had some of my favorite guests this year. I'm thinking of Rachel Jackson talking about Ayurveda. Kimiko Kleiman last week or 2 weeks ago, who changed her career from a fertility doctor to a hormonal health coach. What I also love going over, last year's episodes is that it's almost like tracking the evolution of my own growth as a holistic fertility coach. So that's why I thought I'd do another summary, an end of year summary, because they also really help me see how much my own thinking has evolved over the year. And if you would ask me now, like after all of this year's episodes, why so many people are experiencing fertility issues, I would summarize it as follows. So the first thing that was discussed a lot this year is that we're collectively out of balance. The second thing is that our bodies give us so many clues as to how we both are out of balance, but also how we can find our way back to balance. And all we need to do is just to start listening and start remembering that we have that power to work with our bodies. And then thirdly, actively working with the stressors in our lives is the most transformative thing that you can do on your fertility journey. Like the influence of stress, I know no one wants to hear this, but it came up so often on the podcast. And what I find really empowering is that once we stop looking at stress as something that we need to fear, but again, we can see stress as just a sign of the body that we can work with, then you can really take back your power even in the face of stress. So that's what I'll recap for you today, these 3 points: how we're collectively out of balance, how we can find the information to get back to balance in our bodies, and how you can work with stress to really transform your fertility journey. And please keep in mind, right, this is a summary. So fertility journeys, they're deeply personal, they're unique, and maybe your challenges stem from hormonal imbalances, maybe it's your partner. The key is really in finding what resonates with you, with your specific situation, with your experience. So just listen to this episode and see what you feel applies to you and work with that. So let's turn to that first point, that we are collectively out of balance as a society, as individuals. Our bodies are constantly under stress, and the way we've organized our society and also the values that we've been raised with, they make it so much harder to find our way back to balance. And when I talk about stress here, I mean not just, having to work really hard at your job, although that's one of them, but it's also about that we're no longer eating real food. We're eating way too much processed food. We're not getting the right nutrients in, especially many women. If you were raised anything like me, it was always about not gaining weight and really limiting your caloric intake. Many of us are just malnutritioned, even though we might have, a healthy weight. We're not getting in the right nutrients, especially for fertility. And we're definitely all getting in way too many processed foods. A second thing, we are indoors all the time. Like, we know that vitamin D is a crucial nutrient for fertility. We're not getting enough sunlight, generally speaking. And that's because we're indoors all of the time. We are sitting too much. We're not moving enough. I'm definitely guilty as charged. I think I might not be smoking. They say like sitting is the new smoking, right? I sit way too much and I've gotten so lazy. Like, my body doesn't really have the stamina anymore to just stand all day long or to walk. I know that's really a huge point of improvement for me. But again, we don't have to be perfect, right? I'm just listing many of the different ways in which our systems, our fertility is affected. So it's not eating real food, not getting outside enough, too much sitting, also not sleeping enough. Like, many of us have very, very disrupted sleep patterns. Then we work too much. And then, there's also so much unprocessed intergenerational and personal trauma. Like, we've lost our connection to ritual, to process things. We've lost our ability to surrender to life, which is why the fertility journey can be really hard, because you're not in control and we don't have the tools to cope with that uncertainty. Everything that happens to us, we try to not feel. We're so stuck in our minds. And what that does is all of these unpleasant experiences, like a fertility journey, they remain unprocessed in our bodies. And that's why we carry all of these experiences around with us for so much longer than is really necessary. And then to add on to that, all of these things have a negative effect on our hormonal balance and our reproductive systems. And then we also live in a world where we are exposed to fertility-harming chemicals everywhere we go. I did a whole episode about this, episode 93. So I usually, my approach to fertility is stop doing so much and really start listening to your body. But the one exception I make for that are these fertility-harming chemicals. I created a cheat sheet. You can download it at thatfertilefeeling.com/chemicals. That is just some very basic information there on where in your own household you will find these chemicals and what you can do to remove them, to make sure that at least your fertility isn't being damaged by things that are replaceable. So in a sense, I would say that many of the fertility challenges that we're facing today are really a wake-up call. They're a wake-up call that the way we're living is not sustainable. It's not sustainable to our bodies, and it's not sustainable to the planet. It's really a call to come back in alignment with ourselves, with nature, with the planet. So how can we find our way back to balance? That's the second point I wanted to make today. Our bodies give us clues. And that's really something that came up in all of the episodes this year, that all you need to do is to start listening to your body. Our body gives us so many clues as to what's happening internally, but no one has ever really taught us how to listen to them. So one very clear example is period pain. Many of us grew up believing it's just part of being a woman. And I used to think the same, right? Your period, it hurts. And then you take an Advil and it's fine. That is until I learned at 41 that even common symptoms like just heavy cramping aren't normal. That's a sign of a hormonal imbalance. So when we don't know how to interpret these signals, we lose trust in our bodies, or we just ignore them. And then we end up handing over our power, to doctors, to social media advice, maybe the latest fertility trends. Okay, let's all eat pineapples, right? But in the process, we can feel so lost because we're trying everything, but we're not really sure what's really right for us. And then here's the good news. Your body is always communicating. So it's just a matter of learning to listen to your body. And there are a couple of things that came up throughout the year. So the first thing that gives you a lot of clues about your hormonal balance is your cycle and your period. So you start tracking your cycle and you look at the length of your cycle, the length of your period, and you track what's the blood flow like? Is it heavy? Is there a lot of clotting? What's your PMS like? Do you have sore boobs, lower back pain? All of these things are symptoms. So start tracking those for a couple of months, and then you'll start to see, okay, is there a theme or a recurrent pattern here in these symptoms that's telling me, something's going on, and you can take it from there. The same with digestion, right? We should poop once, twice a day. That's normal digestion. You shouldn't be constipated. You shouldn't have diarrhea all the time. It shouldn't smell very funny. It should have a normal color. All of these things, whoever really notices what their poop looks like. But it gives you a lot of important information about your digestive tract. And there have been a couple of episodes where we discussed how your digestive tract has a huge effect on your fertility, and how the gut microbiome, so all of the microbes that make up your gut, they're one of your largest hormone producing organs, really. So you want to make sure that your gut is happy and healthy, because that will really impact your fertility as well. Another thing to look at are your energy levels, especially after you eat. So do you have these big crashes, especially in the afternoon, right? After eating, maybe then something's going on with your glucose. So that gives you information. Or if you're tired all the time, or if you have brain fog, start tracking how you feel throughout the day. If there are moments where you just crash or not, how you feel when you wake up. It won't tell you something straight away, but it's important to start getting the measure of how your energy levels are. Mood swings, another important thing, how is your And of course, you need to look at that, within the cycle. So obviously during the luteal phase, during the 2-week wait, because of progesterone, you're more prone to want to go inwards. You can get a bit cranky. That's all okay. But yeah, just start tracking those mood swings and again, see what information comes up there. Inflammation, that's the last thing I'll mention for now, just to keep it a bit accessible. But inflammation, if you have joint pain, skin problems, acne, then, you really need to look at what's going on in your body. It can be stress, it can be the food that you're eating. Inflammation means that something's going haywire in your system, and you want to address that because that really affects your fertility. So for all of these things, your cycle, your period, digestion, energy levels, mood swings, inflammation, just start tracking your body's symptoms for a couple of months. And I can hear you thinking straight away, well, I want to get pregnant this month, right? But do it anyway. Start getting that baseline and see what that tells you. It will give you back your power because it will tell you where to start looking for answers. And the same actually applies to your partner. So if you have a male partner, sperm quality is equally important when it comes up to conception. I created a whole episode about this. It's episode 91. I'll link it in the show notes. I feel as women, or that's been my own experience at least, we tend to think that we are responsible, that it's all on us to improve our fertility. Even asking your partner to stop drinking, that's a big one, right? If you're anything like me. But research shows that in 30 to 50% of cases where there are fertility issues, sperm also plays a role, sperm quality. So this is really a joint endeavor, and your partner should definitely also be tracking their bodily symptoms to see what they could be doing. Even if they have normal sperm count, normal sperm morphology, right? Sperm quality is so much more. It's at the DNA level where problems can occur, and that's not something that's usually measured by these tests. So you've tracked your symptoms, you see that there's something going on. What do you do then? If there's anything like irregular cycles or digestive discomfort, there are simple practical tools for you to explore. So what I do, for example, is I teach women abdominal self-massage, which is a technique you can use to improve blood flow to your womb. It can help support digestion. It promotes hormonal balance. This is all something I've discussed in depth in episode 79. So if that's you, if you have irregular cycles, if there are some issues with your gut, go to that episode and see if that's something you might want to learn, the self-massage. If inflammation is a concern, it's worth reflecting on the role of stress in your life. So stress often shows up in the body as joint pain, as these skin issues, acne I just mentioned, swollen lymph nodes. Now, reducing stress is a process, and I'll touch upon that in a second, but it's also one of the most transformative steps you can take, as I've seen with so many clients. So really, really important that you start taking stress seriously, not as something that you want to sort of, avoid at all costs, but really seeing what does this stress tell me and how can I work with this. If diet feels like an area you want to work with or work on, there's so much power in connecting with the right resources. So I can refer you to a couple of fertility nutritionists for tailored support, but I also just recommend the book Real Food for Fertility as a great place to start, and I'll put it in the show notes. But I'm actually planning to invite the author on the podcast next year because she gives she summarizes all the research on the link between food and fertility and really gives you good pointers on where to not necessarily restrict your diet, but what you can include in your diet to, really create a good solid foundation for fertility. Now, I know I make this sound like it's very straightforward, and I know that it's not. As I mentioned before, what we're doing here is actually, it's going against the grain. We try to create a wholesome life for ourselves in a society that just doesn't help at all. And I feel it's really unfair even, our ability to have a child is actively being undermined by the way the world works. And now it's your individual responsibility to break through some of those deeply toxic values and modes of living. So that's overwhelming. And probably you're familiar with the feeling like there's an endless list of things that you should be doing, and each one requiring so much effort and energy. But here's the thing, you don't have to do it all. That's what the beauty is. With tuning into your body, you can shift the focus from following every piece of advice to truly understanding what you need. And when you start making the changes that feel aligned with your body, you'll notice the difference. You'll have more energy, you have fewer aches, you have a more regular cycle. These are really small victories, but they build momentum, and that's the best motivation for lasting positive change. So it's really about creating your own unique fertility framework and feeling like you are in the driver's seat here. That brings me to my final point, stress. So we've already discussed how being out of balance and not listening to the body can impact fertility. But there's really one more critical theme that came up repeatedly this year, the role that stress plays in our fertility journeys. And when you start paying close attention to your body's signals, you often find that unresolved stress is a common thread running through everything. And there's a reason why that is. Because even as you begin to make changes, you might still hear a critical voice in your head, the one that says it's not enough, that you need to work harder, that this might never happen for you, that you're broken. These really harsh, self-critical thoughts that add even more stress to what's already like a really overwhelming process. That's the elephant in the room that we need to address, stress itself. Now, I know stress can feel like another burden, another item on that long to-do list, and it's exhausting. And the last thing you need is to feel like you're somewhat to blame for what you're experiencing. You are not to blame for the stress that's in your life. But stress isn't about blame. That's what I want you to take away with it. It's about reclaiming your power. Because stress doesn't live just in the mind. It impacts your hormones, your immune system, the way your body processes emotions. And while we can't eliminate all stress, learning how to work with it can actually unlock profound changes, both physically and emotionally. It's one of the most impactful steps you can take on this journey. And here's why. These negative thoughts and stressors in your life, they are like a background track in your mind. They're always playing, always influencing how you feel and act, even if you're not fully aware of it. This is why, or what we call the subconscious mind. Think of it really as an autopilot. You know, when you're driving home on a familiar route, only to realize that you can't remember how you got home because you were so caught up in your thoughts, that's your subconscious mind at work. It just runs quietly alongside your conscious mind. It shapes your habits and beliefs. And because it's not the same as your thinking mind, it's not something that we can just think away. These are our subconscious patterns. It's a deeper layer that's very difficult to shape or to access. But it is possible to reprogram that. I think that's the core of my work, is getting you to see that you can step out of these grooves, these deep ways of programming, change that autopilot and how that influences you in your fertility journey. So, some of the beliefs that you might have are that life is meant to be hard. I shouldn't expect anything good. It's a very Christian thinking, right? Life is about hardship. I can't rely on others. In the end, I'm on my own. So many of us, that's the message we got from childhood, that no one was there when we really needed them to. So that's something that you take with you in your fertility journey as well. Or this is common programming in our society. If I just work hard and stay nice, I'll eventually be rewarded. So that's the attitude we take to conception or to fertility as well. It's okay to have these beliefs, but at a certain point, they start to hold us back. In episode 103, Trauma and Fertility, I explore how you can start to shift them. And I feel it's one of the most transformative episodes I've ever recorded, because it really helps you identify where you feel stuck, uncover what is blocking you, and take back control by addressing the stressors in your life. And this isn't just about normalizing your hormones. That is a powerful benefit, but it's about something deeper. It's about coming back into alignment with who you truly are. And it all starts by recognizing what these thoughts are. What are your limiting beliefs? What are the things that are holding you back, that are keeping you small, that are making you believe that, the fertility journey needs to be really hard, that you need to be hard on yourself? Once you start seeing those thoughts and what that does with your nervous system, you can then start taking steps to regulate yourself and to explore, okay, but what are... So I'm going to give you one example. If you've been raised to think that you always need to work really hard, like a lot of my clients are type A perfectionists. So when it comes to the fertility journey, they feel that, especially with all the fertility advice out there, that they need to be perfectionists as well. So they bring that attitude with them into the journey, doing all the research, taking all the supplements, changing their lives around, feeling crappy because, everything evolves around conception. So the first thing I want to explore with them is like, does it feel at all possible to improve your fertility by doing nothing? And then, does that feel true or not? And that's what we do then in a session, is we'll go into the belief, what would happen if you wouldn't do anything? And then, of course, a lot of panic comes up, because that's not how we were programmed. We were programmed to work really hard. And then in a visualization, I will take them to that state and say, but okay, what if this belief were true? How would that feel in your body? And then they start to feel, okay, but if I were to trust that my fertility could also be improved by me not working so hard, but me maybe enjoying life, adding a couple of things to my week that I actually really enjoy, rather than that I do because they're beneficial to my fertility, they start to feel this huge relief coming up within themselves. And they see, but this is how I open to life. This is how I actually relax, right? That's the thing no one wants to hear, but that then all of a sudden it becomes clear that it's possible, that it is possible to relax on your fertility journey. It's really, really tricky to summarize this in like 2 minutes. This is a session, well, we usually work together for 3 months, and then we do a session every week, but just to sort of explain what that looks like, to look at those underlying beliefs and stressors, and then to start exploring what's the alternative. And that's really what my own fertility journey taught me. After, it took me a decade to conceive. And the thing I learned along the way is that I had been living life the way society told me was the right way. Working too hard, ignoring my body, never setting boundaries. So my journey really became an invitation to step away from that and discover my unique path, my way to thrive. It really transformed fertility from something that drained me into something that was, that journey in the end, it was deeply nourishing. Even as I went in for IVF, it was something, I made self-care my priority, self-care and pleasure. And that changed everything. And even now, as a mother of 3, I can see how this also shaped the way I show up for my children now. I'm a different mother because of everything I learned along the way. It's not just about becoming a parent. It's really, for me, it's been about becoming the truest version of myself, the most flourishing version of myself. And I feel ultimately that is what the fertility journey is here to teach you, how to come home to yourself. And that's what I'm here to guide you with. So if you feel like, oh, this inspires me, I want to find that version of myself. I want to see how I can have a fertility journey that is actually nourishing, that, I can let go of that search for control and really start to open up to what my body is saying, to what my intuition is saying. I feel guided by a higher power. That's what I can help you with. I love to hear from you if that's you. So send me an email at francoise@fertilefeeling.com, or you can also book a free discovery call using the link in the show notes. And we can start the year strong, 2025, working on this together. So to recap what we discussed on the podcast this year, we're collectively out of balance. We can find our way back to balance by starting to listen to our bodies. And when we truly start listening, we'll be able to identify and transform some of our most persistent and most undermining stressors. And for next year, my plan is to dive deeper into some of these themes. I want to talk with experts about the food that we eat, how that affects fertility, about the immune system, thyroid issues, how those affect fertility, but mostly about the deep healing that is available to us when we start connecting to our wombs, to our bodies, to our intuition, and to spirit. So stay tuned for the next episodes. Have an amazing new year. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. And if you want to reach out to me, I just mentioned it already, you can find me email me at francoise@thatfertilefeeling.com or send me a DM on Instagram at thatfertilefeeling. I always love to hear from you, and I always get back to you, and hope to see you back in the new year. Bye bye.